This is the perfect time for this UConn team to be hitting their stride. So let's discuss UConn's 100-57 rout of Villanova last night, Wednesday, January 22nd. This was UConn's second highest point total of the season, and I feel like an even 100 is always just a really neat number to score. It definitely feels like UConn are firing on all cylinders right now. I mean, they shot 65% from the field and 50% from three. There's not a lot stopping this UConn team when they shoot that well, but more so than their high field goal percentage, I think the real takeaway of these past two games for UConn fans has been more about the eye test. The offense just looks better. Gino has said himself that he's slashed the team's offensive playbook. Whatever they did there was obviously a pretty good decision. And also the team's chemistry seems to be hitting a sweet spot. Kaitlyn Chen did briefly touch on it in her post-game interview, saying that by now they really have made significant strides in adjusting to each other's play styles and figuring out how to play together as a unit. How UConn played tonight and on Sunday is exactly how UConn needs to play, in my opinion. There are still a few adjustments that I would like to see them make, but overall, I think this is probably how they should run their offense and move the ball going forward. Something is clearly working, and it's definitely the right time to be on a positive trajectory, and hopefully they stay there. And leading the charge for this UConn team, as per usual, is of course Paige Bueckers. Halfway through the game, I made a comment that she was on triple-double watch. She finished the first half with 19 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds. There was definitely a clear path with those stats, but I didn't mean it like super seriously. Paige took it seriously. She finished with 21 points, 9 assists, and 8 rebounds. She did technically miss out on the triple-double, but she also only played 3 quarters. Just another outstanding and incredibly complete performance from Paige. It became very clear very quickly that Paige was feeling it. I feel like with Paige, there's definitely a moment where after a couple shots go in, us as fans realize that we are about to witness a signature Paige Bueckers game. You just get a feeling. She was scoring from everywhere on the court, hit all of her 3 threes, had a couple great takes to the basket. Of course, Paige is just so proficient at identifying and pursuing gaps in the defense. So there was a couple times where she drove and the lane was just wide open for her. Part of that is probably defensive miscommunication, but she's also just great at finding space for herself. And her mid-range game, which was really on display tonight, is another great example of that. She does a great job of taking full advantage of the screens that her teammates set for her. Even if you give her an inch of space, she's pulling up at the free throw line, taking those elbow jumpers. Such a smooth shot, such a quick release. She is a lethal scorer and someone who can truly score from every single position on the basketball court. And I feel like that statement is thrown around a little bit, but in my opinion, there are few players who truly embody it like Paige Bueckers does. And a moment that I just always really appreciate from Paige is something like in the first quarter, UConn got out to an early big lead. I think they were up by 10 within 3 minutes or so, but out of the timeout, Villanova responded immediately and went on a 6-0 run. And after that mini run, Paige on the next possession took the ball and just hit a pull-up mid-range jumper. It's one of those actions where it's just like enough. I think Paige's ability to put a pause on the other team's momentum and get UConn back on track and back into the motion of scoring is something that I've always just really appreciated about her game. It's definitely something you want from your star player, and Paige delivers on that. But not only for herself, Paige also did an excellent job of facilitating the offense for her teammates. She had 9 assists, so I think that's pretty clear. But when you watch her play, some of the passes that she makes and the way that she sets up her teammates is just truly outstanding to witness, and the impact of it cannot be overstated enough. These last few games where Paige has had more minutes playing on ball and getting to facilitate the offense and has racked up more assists have both been some of UConn's strongest performances of the season. So for that reason, and also a dozen of other reasons, I feel like the answer of how to run this offense or who to have run this offense is pretty clear. I guess we'll see if it continues. I really, really hope it does. I've wanted nothing more than for Paige to take a point guard role for this team. I know a lot of people feel the exact same way, and it has been very, very exciting to see that it's potentially coming to fruition. I mean, for some examples of what Paige Bueckers can do with the ball in her hands, after she got one of her steals, she and Sarah Strong were running ahead of the pack in transition, and she just thread the most beautiful bounce pass to Sarah. It was literally gorgeous basketball. I really like plays where Jana comes and sets the screen for Paige, and then they do a little bit of pick and roll action. I would love to see that become a staple of this team. Paige truly does make her teammates better. Again, I know that statement might be overused or might sound like a cliche, but with Paige Bueckers, the fact of the matter is it rings true, and it's one of the many things that makes her so great. And in between hitting basically every single mid-range jumper that she took, Paige will run to the opposite side of the court, immediately telegraph a cross-court pass, and get a steal. It literally felt like she was everywhere on that court. There are few things I have enjoyed more than watching her grow into the defender that she is today. Moving on to another guard, I do want to give Kaitlyn Chen her flowers. This was arguably Kaitlyn Chen's strongest showing of the season. Not only did she score a season-high 17 points, but she was also very clearly being more aggressive on offense and looking to score rather than looking to pass or defer to teammates, and that willingness to shoot the ball is so promising for this team. I definitely fall into the crowd of people where I think that Paige should be playing on ball more, and Kaitlyn should get more minutes and opportunities and looks playing off ball, and they did it for a lot of this game, and it was very clearly successful. Kaitlyn even said herself in the post-game press conference that she hasn't been looking for her shot, and specifically her mid-range pull-up, very much, but that was not the case in this game. She did a little bit of everything. I think she hit a 3 or 2 somewhere in the corner. One was coming off a screen from Jana, a couple mid-range shots and pull-ups, and she seems to really like making use of the glass, and then some solid cuts to the basket as well. This was actually Kaitlyn's first time scoring in double figures since the Notre Dame game in December. If she can consistently score in double figures for this team, I think it will open up so much opportunity both for her and her teammates. A fun fact is also that her career high in college was against Villanova. Back when she played at Princeton in December of 2023, she scored 31 points against Villanova. Next, I'm going to talk about Sarah Strong, because when is there a night where Sarah Strong is not on? There was a moment in the SNY postgame show where Gary Apple and Kara Walters kind of shied away from calling Sarah Strong the best freshman in the country, which I understand as UConn broadcasters, maybe they don't want to come off as too biased, but luckily I don't work as a broadcaster, so I can and will say it. Sarah Strong is the best freshman in the country. In my mind, she has already locked up National Freshman of the Year, especially because she's just so consistent that I feel like I know exactly what we're going to get from her for the rest of the season. And if she were to continue on this trajectory, how could she not be National Freshman of the Year? And on top of that, I think that Sarah Strong should actually be in the conversation for every single award in the country, not just the freshman ones. The thing is, her game feels almost quiet sometimes. Like tonight, some people might say that she had a quiet 22 points on 8 of 10 shooting from the field with 4 assists and 5 rebounds and 2 steals, might I add. And she's doing this stuff every night. As a freshman, not only giving this UConn team such valuable production, but doing it so efficiently and being arguably the most consistent player on this roster this season. Like, isn't she leading the country in field goal percentage inside of the 3-point line? That is crazy in general, but even more crazy for a freshman. I think 2 of the things that I appreciate the most from Sarah Strong is, one, that she just always seems to be in the right place, whether it's her positioning down low that allows her to get an easy basket, whether it's her stance on defense that allows her to block a shot or get a steal or be the help defender that comes over and helps set the trap or poke free the loose ball, or it's her standing beyond the 3-point line and threading super smart and super precise passes to her cutting teammates. And that gets into the second thing from Sarah Strong that I think impresses me the most, and it is, of course, her passing and her court vision. She, like Paige, does a great job of seeing and recognizing and setting up her teammates for success, and her play style and her performances are just so beyond her years as a freshman. I cannot say enough good things about Sarah Strong. Next, I'm going to shout out Ice Brady. I think I also talked about this in the last video after Seton Hall, so I'm glad to see that the pattern is repeating itself because I do feel like she has been playing much better as of late. She finished with 6 points, 2 rebounds, an assist, and 2 steals. She had some great moments on offense. She had a great move down low under the basket in the second quarter. She also hit a mid-range long 2, which I always think of as her signature shot. When she's knocking those down, it's a good day for UConn. And then in the third or fourth quarter, there was a play where she set a screen for Ashlyn, cut to the basket, and Ice did a really good job hesitating, letting the defender kind of fly by her so she could have a clear look at an easy 2. This UConn team, in theory, has a lot of different options for scoring, but the consistency of that scoring is a little more in question. So taking advantage of those opportunities when they do present themselves is something that I feel like the bench players, including Ice, will continue to hone in on. I still would like to see Ice pull down a few more rebounds per game. I think her growth there is kind of dependent on positioning. That kind of goes for a lot of the team. This team definitely needs to prioritize rebounding and boxing out, but with Ice playing that power forward or center role, it's especially salient for her. But overall, I am so glad to see her playing well, getting more comfortable, and figuring out her spots and her rhythm in game. Next, very quickly, shout out to KK Arnold for double figures. She finished with 11 points, and the point guards were definitely leading the way today with Paige, Kaitlyn, and KK all in double figures. That's not actually why I brought up KK. I brought her up to give her a shout out for leading the Huskies in offensive rebounds rebounding with 2 offensive rebounds. A 5'9" point guard. In UConn's defense, they didn't miss many of their shots today, so there weren't many offensive rebounds to get. Anyway, for the second game in a row, KK and Morgan Shelley were actually the first 2 Huskies off the bench. So as of now, it's no longer Ashlyn Shade, who I'm going to talk about next. Ashlyn still got in really quickly. She got in after 7 minutes, and she played 20 minutes, which is about equal to KK, and more than any other bench player and even a starter in Jana. So Ashlyn still has been playing a decent amount, even as UConn is still trying to figure out and pare down its lineups. But I will say that, in my opinion, I do think there needs to be a more concerted effort to get Ashlyn Shade looks on offense. She usually gets quite a few looks late in the third and fourth quarter once the bench is in, but I do expect her to be playing important minutes with the main unit come March. So I do think that in those lineups, it's important for UConn to find ways to get Ashlyn looks and get her involved. She scored her first points in this game with 1 or 2 minutes left in the third quarter, and it wasn't because she had shot poorly up to that point. She was just 0 for 1 from the field. She did only finish 3 of 7 from the field, and I would like to see more consistency in her shot, but Ashlyn displays a willingness to shoot the ball and look to score and create her own shot that few players on this team do outside of the big 3, and I think that really will become increasingly valuable. UConn is definitely in a position right now where they're trying to figure out how to get everyone involved, and there's some clear growing pains there, but with AZ and Ashlyn specifically, I just think they're so important to how this team is going to operate on offense, especially against tougher opponents and especially come March. So I think that's a top priority for this team and for this coaching staff to figure out. Which brings me to my last point and my more constructive takeaway from this game, which is that I still do feel like UConn's perimeter defense needs some work. I still feel like this UConn team is losing the players that they're defending a little too often. And of course, it doesn't really matter when they're playing a Big East team that isn't shooting well, but against a tougher opponent or just a team with better shooters, it can really make or break the game and the game plan. So making sure to not leave people open on the perimeter, staying with their man on defense, not giving the opponent too much space, doubling effectively and not so that it leaves someone on the opposing team wide open. Small things like that, things will happen, but I do think there are some defensive schemes and choices that maybe could be reconsidered. I'm really hopeful that UConn will improve at their perimeter defense because I feel like that is the one really obvious Achilles heel of this team. So if they figure that out and they're playing like this offensively, I would just be so excited about this team's prospects. I already am in many ways, but that's the one thing where I think it would really seal the deal. And yeah, this UConn team have what is likely going to be their toughest Big East matchup to date coming up on Saturday when they play Creighton. So it will definitely be really interesting and telling if they can keep up this momentum in that game as well. I really hope they do and they come out strong. I will unfortunately not be able to watch that game live. I think I'll have to watch later that night. So my game recap might be a little late, but I promise it will get posted. And yeah, let me know your thoughts and takeaways from this game as always. And that's what happened with the Huskies today. Till next time.